want to deal with him? Heck, probably not. But I basically...
This is the University of Pennsylvania, and we are holding a teach-in.
We are putting on a teach-in for the first time in about half a century.
We're kicking off a week-long celebration of the mission of the university at a time when knowledge has become really deeply politicized.
How do we know what we know, and how do we communicate that to the greater community?
The first thing we have to do is to be able to have a dialogue.
The university is part and parcel of the community. One can't exist without the other.
This is why the public should come, because in so many people's lives they don't have the experience of what it's like to have a meaningful disagreement.
At the heart of all of this is knowledge, and we're going to try to build upon this.
We're here at Penn. Welcome to our teach-in. Enjoy!
This is the kickoff event for the Penn Teach-In of 2018.
Thank you so much, Wendell, and thank you all for being here. This is a really exciting week at Penn, and I have to tell you that it has been an absolute delight for me to get to know some of the people here at Penn, Dr. Venkatesh and our panelists. Really been a wonderful experience. You know, there is a quote that is attributed to Ben Franklin, and it goes like this, of course, the founder of the University of Pennsylvania. The quote goes like this: "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest."
I've been thrilled with the energy and excitement that's been shown so far, and it's a way that Penn is really being a leader and really fulfilling actually what Benjamin Franklin said Penn should be, an institution dedicated to the highest principles of morality and educating students for citizenship and taking a lead on crucial issues of its time.
I'd like to begin by asking each of you to share briefly with us how you think about knowledge and its role in the 21st century.
It's important for me to share the knowledge that I generate, but it's also important for me to learn from people outside the university to make my research better and more useful.
And the other thing I would say for me, knowledge is being able to integrate across multiple sources and to think critically.
Is it possible that in the future there will be a destruction of the notion of race or the categorization of race that is present today, or is it too deeply ingrained in our social fabric to do so?
So the topic of race is a fundamental one that we're debating in our society right now, and in the world. And so I think digging in deeply in this kind of question and thinking about the historical aspects of race and how research has played a role in creating our understandings, but how research interacts with society and politics and different aspects is really important to having a meaningful conversation about who we want to be as a country and the role of research and the role of higher education in our society. So it's a really fundamental aspect of that question.
Knowledge is influenced by and helps to produce a way of thinking about the world. And so social assumptions can affect our very design of research and how we interpret the results.
I think it's an ethical question. It's what do we value, what do we care about and believe in? And I think to understand that knowledge is guided by the answer to this kind of ethical imperative, I think is really important. And depending on what your ethics are, the knowledge you produce can be very different, and what you do with that knowledge can also.
I think it's exceedingly important. Now is a crucial time for universities to look at what they're doing and to do it better and to share it with the world and to work with communities. That the current situation in our society and world demands that universities both examine what they're doing, step forward, and be involved in creative action. So I think the Teach In is wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Happens on campus all the time. Yeah, this is what this place is all about. Ask your questions, see if you can get an answer. Yeah, that's what it's all about. And hope you get an answer before you leave. Yeah, you can only hope.
Hello, we're in front of the Penn Museum, and today is the first event of Penn's Teach In 2018.
So it's actually free to enter the museum today?
Today is a free event geared towards kids, and thought it would be cool.
As you know, what we're supposed to be doing here today is talking a little bit about how we create and how we disseminate knowledge. So the Penn Museum obviously supports projects like this all over the world, and my project in Mississippi is just one example. And these projects are constantly creating new knowledge about the past human experience. But equally importantly, the Penn Museum curates about 1 million objects, only about 1% of which are on display at any given time. And as scientific techniques and new hypotheses are developed, it's these objects, the reanalysis of these objects, that can actually allow us to reveal sort of new and exciting details about past lifeways.
We're talking in depth about what is archaeology, what are the subfields of anthropology, and how we bring that all together to teach Penn students, but also, you know, we are an incredible bridge to the University of Pennsylvania because we have so many people with amazing questions from different disciplines across campus.
We are interested in coming here because of the methods that are used to do research in archaeology.
I came from the University of Delaware. I am a student there taking an archaeology class, and I'm here for a project where I have to come and do a critical analysis of an exhibit. And so I kind of wandered throughout the museum and saw that this exhibit was having a talk done, so I came down and I listened to the talk, and then I ended up spending probably about 45 minutes talking with the curator herself.
By opening up the museum to the public today, we can show them how it works behind the scenes, how a scholar actually is able to take objects that they find in the ground and begin to understand how people lived in the past.
It is hopping. There's so many kids here as well and families, so it's really been an excellent day. I think people are really eager to learn more about the museum, and they seem to be having a really fun time, which is great.
What did you like so far?
That we got to touch the spoons and stuff.
The stone Steve lays downstairs?
And those high statues.
Yeah.
To actually touch the stuff.
Yeah, it was cool.
There's a lot of museum things you can't touch.
Right.
So it's a very good thing that kids can touch and feel things.
It's one thing to read it from a book, but to be able to touch it and see it in person is, I think, for me personally, is a better way to learn.
Because I was there, and in a book you're not there.
Especially when we're going in there and they had a lot of the conservatory things that we can go back and see what they're currently working on. A lot of first-hand knowledge. It kind of works out well, so it's not just a book, it's not a page, it's not a video, 3,000 miles away. Something you can almost touch, not quite touch, right? We did get yelled at once for touching something.
They've seen it on, cartoons and other things and movies, and you really want to show in real life some of the real artifacts from thousands and thousands of years ago to put your hands on it. I think that's the most amazing thing.
Just seeing the look on her face when she was checking out some of the stuff, like looking through the microscope. We got to go into where they do the actual, the conservationists are behind the glass. And that was really neat, right, to watch them actually working on real artifacts.
So a lot of things in there was interactive, so it was good for me, but good for them too. So I think the scavenger hunt tied things in really well.
So we created a new scavenger hunt for today that focuses on how we know about ancient cultures. And it's a crossword puzzle, takes place in all of the galleries. We wanted the children to discover things for themselves. They are in a process of discovering how archaeologists discover things.
I got to see different types of rocks.
We checked out the mummies too. That was the first thing we did, right? What did you think of the mummies?
Some of them were scary.
The Sphinx was really cool too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As part of the archaeological research process, we want to be able to understand objects and spaces. And we want to be able to put together real objects with virtual spaces or virtual objects with real spaces. So for example, in our gallery we have a lot of objects coming from different countries around the world, perhaps from contexts from buildings that no longer exist. By using augmented reality, we can actually reconstruct the virtual environment around a real object.
But I think it's a great learning opportunity. I love it. I'm very impressed. Having never been here before, I was like, this is right here, and I had no idea. This is great.
One of our roles as curators is to connect with the public, and in a way we sort of translate the anthropological work that we do. We're a kind of translator.
When you can talk to the person who actually put it together, you really, on that deeper level, understand really what they meant when they put everything where it is.
We're looking to learn more and to maybe rediscover something that perhaps hasn't been discovered before. Very important to have activities like this where you can get kind of multi-generations involved.
It was just interesting to see that in the museum, and my kids and I were talking about it, and we're going to actually talk to other people about that.
You can't wait to tell everybody about your day. Yes. Just took a lot of pictures.
So today just was an accumulation of fantastic things to happen.
This is gold. This is gold.
So we're really happy that you came today to learn more.
So the libraries are participating in the Knowledge Teach In, and our event is called Critical Engagement with Knowledge. The libraries have a big role to play in creation and distribution of knowledge. So we're stopping people as they walk down the hallway here and asking them if they've heard about the Knowledge Teach In. Topics that are being discussed at these events and give you some ideas about how to do research in those areas.
Yeah, we're just kind of wondering and taking a look at how knowledge is produced and how people interact with knowledge. Where do you get your news from? How do you start your research?
So we've taken some of the topics that are being covered across the teach-in throughout this week and created research posters to give guidance and to demonstrate how research should be done. So the idea is that research is an important skill to learn, and it takes effort, and you don't stop at the first thing you find, you keep looking. And in exchange for their thoughts on how they collect news or how they start their research, we're giving them a $1 off coupon at Mark's Cafe. So we've had some nice talks with students and with some members of the community trying to ask questions that help students think about the steps that are involved with doing good research. Like to think about digging into or revealing, uncovering what sort of will lead to a full sense of knowledge. Like archaeology, that's one of the things we were thinking about, knowledge archaeologists, that students, scholars are knowledge archaeologists.
Part of the Penn Teach In, teaching racism. I'm here because I teach, and I want to learn as much as I can about what people are talking about now and how to improve the way I teach.
This was a panel on teaching race. It was an opportunity for faculty in the school across the humanistic disciplines to talk about how they research and write about race, and then how they bring that research, that often very complex work, into the classroom and present it and discuss it with their students.
Yes, I think I have a little question on Professor Amy Wax and the perspective professors should take on race, and is that a base for should university limit the perspective professors should take on race, and should university limit the education part, how professors should educate their students about race?
Professor Amy Wax in the Penn Law School, who's recently been much in the news locally and nationally for controversial remarks she's made about differential abilities between black students and other students at Penn Law. And does anyone want to comment on that? Is Amy here? Professor Wax? I doubt it.
We had a wonderful discussion afterwards. It started off actually with some headline news about Penn. A professor in the School of Law made some controversial remarks about African Americans being qualified to be in the School of Law. which touched on a lot of different topics that we discussed.
Her most controversial remarks were about not seeing enough African Americans in the law school, like the top quarter, I believe it was, of law school. I mean, I was claiming about seeing, so maybe she was look a little bit more careful. But in any case, it's appropriate to talk about those things. People believe these things, of course. So if you can't talk about these things in a university setting, where can you talk about them?
I think the example that you raise about Professor Wax really underscores to us the fact that the university space is no more, no less racialized or segregated than other parts of U.S. society. And I think the key issue is that focusing on one person should not come at the expense of focusing on it as a structural and an institutional problem.
Do you find that intimidates African American students, or do they feel like, why should I go there if this, especially first year students, which now she's not teaching first year anymore, would that intimidate them? Would they say, I'd prefer to go to another university where I don't have that additional obstacle?
I also think history is a very powerful way to ask those kinds of questions, because one thing it teaches you is the many different ways that people have, the many kinds of structures and forms of logic. History is not a story of high reason. Okay, history is a story of unreason, of violence, of cruelty, of injustice. Those are the dominant themes in human history.
In your teaching process, what is your major objective? Is it to change attitudes? Is it to bring out attitudes? Is it to develop a model that can change psyche, biases, intentions, and things like that, that may tend to improve, let's say, the general feelings of America or in America?
What I try to do is more the sort of Socratic method, raising questions, getting them to see their own ignorance, right? Because people tend to walk into my courses thinking they're the expert on race. I know what race is, I know what racism is, and especially individuals who have powerful experiences. A lot of African American students come to my course. I'm going to tear this course up. It's like, not necessarily, right? So sit back, listen, be humble, do the reading, engage deeply. And by the end of the course, people typically change their mind on something that they claim that they would never change their mind.
So what do you give them so that 20 years from now they have a set of questions or perspectives? And it's exactly what Kwaishan is talking about. It's not a set of received truths. It's a set of what do you need to understand about the world to move forward productively. And that's what I hope we give them. And understanding these questions about social order and hierarchy is an important part of surviving in today's world. I can't tell them how to think, but I can give them tools. That's how I feel. I can give them some ways of seeing that permit them to see more. That's what a great teacher does.
Evocative, and I thought about a lot of things and what we talked about separately about different perspectives on the same topic, bringing a larger truth, or at least bringing many different ways to look at a question and the tools. It's the key.
Especially with the state of affairs right now, the country is very polarized. And so it's good to know that this university is working, even though the professors are using their own interests and expertise. It's allowing them to change minds, build hearts, at the same time to improve society.
If you reflect on these things, it can help you have a better overall life. It would definitely make it easier to have these conversations in political contexts. People aren't just screaming at each other, but they can actually engage in a productive way. So to whatever extent we can help the undergraduate students and graduate students here achieve those intellectual accomplishments, being able to be reflective and thoughtful and respectful and humble when to discuss race. I think that was something that we communicated to the audience is something that Penn is really serious about doing, bettering the student to be a better citizen.
In 1998, a physician and scientist in the UK published a relatively small paper linking a particular kind of childhood vaccine to the onset of autism. And within a very brief time, there were many larger scale studies that were much more scientifically produced and unbiased that showed that there was no such link, but the damage had already been done. And people were afraid to have their children vaccinated because of the dreaded concern about their child potentially having autism. I mean, truthfully, vaccinations are one of the things that has enabled people from across the world to live in a healthy way. I mean, we've been able to practically eradicate certain diseases that used to be the scourge of people's childhood. Again, part of what I'm concerned about is how it, particularly in the medical field, fear, distrust, gets linked to certain medical practices that are really in people's best interest. So I would like us to do a better job of talking about our discoveries, helping people understand our discoveries, understanding more about what makes them afraid.
Go back in time, so here's someone's answer, wished I had gotten the vaccine.
Nobody is in a vacuum. You know, we're all impacted by each other and by each other's opinions and by how things are perceived. So you can develop an amazing vaccine, but if people don't believe you and if people don't use that vaccine, then your work is not going to make any impact. So I think it's really important to continue to communicate with each other to see, you know, how is my work perceived here and what are people saying here and how can we work together to maybe have more impact.
I am happy to say we just finished the vaccine denial panel here at the Perelman School of Medicine as part of the Teach In. It went fantastically. We had great audience input, lots of questions, particularly about how once misinformation about vaccination gets into the public, how do we use what we know from knowledge and science to help persuade people that vaccinations are actually really a life-saving procedure that helps our communities and the population in general.
I think it's important for universities to also open up. I mean, you know, to just present the work and to have events where people can come in and they can listen and they can meet the people who are doing the research and hear what they have to say and what motivates them, what's their passion, why they're doing this work. So I think it's very important to open up and to have those conversations. Because otherwise, why are we doing the work if we're not talking about the work?
I think of you as like an expert on the panel as well to help us figure out how to communicate this stuff more effectively. So a lot of the big problem with science is that it's not intuitive, right? And that's why we do science. Right.
We had lots of questions of Mike and Scott, who is a WHYY reporter who was here to moderate our Q&A. She did a fantastic job really talking about the role of the media and how the media can help or hurt the dissemination of science and knowledge into the community. And so overall, I think it was an incredibly successful event, and now we're going to go have lunch.
I think it is valuable. I think that's one thing I will take away from the session is that when talking to people, to approach them on their worldview.
There's a difference in how do you approach those kinds of people.
Oh, gotcha, yes.
So I feel like it's very dependent on who you're talking to and who you are.
I work in infectious disease in a research capacity, and so it's very homogenous in our beliefs in that, like, vaccines are very good, so you don't have to ever really argue that they're bad, or you don't have to argue against the fact that some people don't believe in the effectiveness of them. So it's interesting to hear how to communicate your beliefs in a way that, like, you walk away think that you maybe made a difference.
If that's not like, I'm going to vaccinate my kids because I care about my kids' health, maybe it's I'm going to vaccinate my kids if I ever have them, or I'm always going to get vaccinated with the flu shot, just because it's selfish of me not to.
I mean, they kind of talked about that, how in medical school now they're not really teaching med students like how to do that. Like, they are telling them to be open-minded, but like, what are the skills that we could use to like actually talk to these people?
Well, and it's hard
when
for
you see
physicians
them.
too. You have what, 15 minutes to
Yeah.
see a family. You're not going to have a comprehensive discussion on how vaccines work in, you know, the 15 minutes you get with them.
I think it's more valid to draw the conclusion of, like, we're part of a society and there's some people who just can't get vaccinated, so we should get vaccinated so that they can hopefully not get sick.
As someone who like belongs to a population of people that have been oppressed by the medical institution, I'm excited to go into it head like straight on and be like, look, it isn't all that bad. It's not as bad as you think it is. I know it's been bad before, but like, let me show you, let me lead by example, let me help you. And we need more people who have been oppressed to get in there so, you know, you can build that trust. Like, I know a Puerto Rican female who might have a history of, you know, maybe their mother or grandmother being like sterilized in LA, like all that happened. I know they're gonna trust me. I'm Puerto Rican, I can talk to you. I know your pain, I know what you went through, I know your struggles every day. But look, I'm here to help you, and all these people are here to help you. And I know that's hard to imagine given the history of everything, but we really just want to help. Do we always do it in the best way? No. Can we do it in a better way? Yeah. I want to be a part of that change, of doing it in a better way.
This is like my favorite part of being part of an academic community, is that there are opportunities to have these more broad general discussions that aren't necessarily directly within my field, but still affect my life and are really interesting. And we have so many experts here at Penn that it's really a great advantage that we have here. So this is a really unique opportunity.
So we put together a panel on firearm violence for a number of reasons. One is we have a very active injury science community at Penn, researchers who work across campus, across disciplines. It's a tough area to study. It's a tough area to talk about. It's an area that has restricted funding. So at the federal level, nothing that's funded by NIH or CDC, none of the research funded by those organizations can be used to advocate for gun control. So while we don't advocate for gun control, we just want to decrease injury and death. That's had a chilling effect on funding. And as researchers, funding's absolutely essential. So why did we focus on this? Because it is the perfect storm, the perfect intersection of how science is affected by politics and policy. Science is affected by politics and policy, and how I don't think that that is in the best interest of the health and well-being of individuals, families, and communities. That's why we put that together. But we're killing people every single day in the United States. We need to pay attention to that every single day. So should the public pay attention to that? Absolutely. We see firearms involved in homicides and interpersonal. We see firearms involved in suicides. So everybody's affected by it. That's why the public should be interested, and we would love for them to attend.
Hi, I'm Andy from Paoli. The last teach-in I was in was 50 years ago. Liberals who used to have hope now have fear in a way they didn't before Trump became president, which ties into the whole thing of guns, because the fear-based use of guns.
I was into a panel on gun violence, on, what would you say, policy?
Yes, and how the public discourse affects gun violence issues in the United States, especially.
I felt like that it did bring up more questions. I would like to see more about this in the future. I would say I would like to see more of a follow-up to this topic.
Yeah,
and
how we reach people.
Right.
How we go from this step of knowing some of these things to actually reaching people in terms of policy.
Because I was saying, I also went, and were you there, the one on vaccination? That I felt like some of the information there might even be applicable to this topic.
Mm-hmm.
But they're really talking about how to reach people through social network and through different means to maybe educate people. I hate to say change their mind, but maybe that's what we're talking about. So I feel like some of that panel might be useful for this panel.
Or as you said,
Or
open
the
a
racism
dialogue.
one too.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, and the same with the racism
Yeah.
issue that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Even opening dialogue, because on a personal level, I think I've shut down dialogue with some of the people that I know who have very different views than I do. I have no patience.
Right.
And that's wrong.
This may be the 50th anniversary of the teach-ins, but the fact of the matter is they have a lot of things at Penn read and learn stuff.
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And I try to take advantage of those when I can. As an alum, they send me a lot of stuff in my email. So I come down and every once in a while, if I see something that I find interesting, I'll come down and check it out.
That's great.
Oh, we're getting ready to go to the donut crawl. I was just told by the good doctor, she says, oh, they're giving donuts over on the donut crawl in front of Van Pelt, so why not? It'll be all washed away 12 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. See if you can pass the quiz. 6 questions about common misconceptions in evolution.
Is it really true that humans are descended from apes?
No, it's not true.
That is correct.
Because we're all on the same tree, but we're not descended from apes.
Yeah, any question that begins, is it really true?
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably true.
We got this highly pigmented chalk. There's these different points on the timeline of evolution that we're, illustrating.
So we put together this event called a Walk Through Time, the Evolution Donut Crawl. We collaborated with biology graduate students and my colleague Deirdre Murphy in the School of Design. And so between her art students and our biology grad students, we had multiple meetings and tried to sort of see what can we do in addition to just simply having a timeline of evolution.
When Mark Schmidt contacted me, I said, well, this is such an important conversation to have that I turned it into content for my syllabus for the curriculum for this semester. So I don't usually cover, color in drawing 1, but I thought this was really important, and really wanting to do some resistance art. I thought what a great way to participate in Teach In, but by having my students actually come up with the ideas.
So the idea is that there are 2 organisms that evolve together, and it's like one adaptation is to defend itself from the other, and then the other organism does a counter adaptation. It is a snake and a newt. It's a garter snake and a rough-skinned newt. So what happens is that this newt secretes this like really toxic chemical.
Mucus?
It's called like TTX. And it's evolved to the point where it could kill 30 humans. Yet this snake has evolved like in its own body to be resistant to this. So it's the only way that like an organism could fight itself against a toxin that it would ingest would be to inhale some kind of like antidote. So like that's why there's like this gas mask, and it's leading to this like barrel full of like gaseous antidote. This one is where the newt is winning, and then this one is where the snake is winning, which is like present time right now.
Thus we have color in drawing 1. I broke some rules for Teach In.
So the evolutionary walk fits within the mission of the Across Campus Teach In as one of the events that is most visible. A lot of people from outside of the community actually use this as a shortcut through campus. And so we wanted to give a timeline of evolution through this walk. And as they just walk up or walk down the walk, they can see our different exhibits and learn some interesting facts that one, for example, I didn't even realize myself, that there are 3 major events throughout in the last 500 million years where in each event, over 60% of life just went extinct. So I think those are really cool facts that people can learn just in a fun way, and then while enjoying donuts.
So I think it's really interesting how you can just have this little shift where one group goes one way, one goes another, and then you end up at these very different and important changes. Do you guys want some free donuts? They're totally free.
Totally free?
Totally free.
Nice snacks,
So what's the purpose?
So this is all for the Teach-In, which is
we've seen
a whole bunch
the
of
chalk
things.
around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's attached to that. So we're giving out facts about milk evolution, and then this whole walk is this evolutionary timeline. So we have signs here showing like different branch points, and there's some posters talking about different evolutionary ideas. It's kind of the whole thing.
Thank you.
We're giving out donuts and milk as this like co-evolutionary thing. So there's all this co-evolution art over here too.
Long live evolution.
Yeah, that's right. It will. It's gonna do fine. We also want to get across this idea of how tightly linked to the rest of animals humans are. So all of this walk, the last like foot is all of human evolution, which I think is pretty cool too.
Right? From the beginning, that it started a long time ago. We're just like a blip, but imagine the damage we're doing in such a short amount of time. But here, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the future of robots and people evolving together.
So in the future, we'll really see like robots and humans like working together in like many of our endeavors. So it's just like an extension of us, I guess, eventually.
You can look at one artist's interpretation of that. So over there, he has got like two figures where maybe you can upload your consciousness to a new body.
So the drawings on the ground are basically how it's like the creative side of robotics, and so people draw what they think robots will be in the future.
But we also have state-of-the-art current robots that you can look at and get inspired.
Penn is a research university, so it's just basically an area for new innovation where people learn how to think well, and so that can basically better our world.
So yeah, this is one of their robots, and then this is Talani. He works with these robots.
We want to really understand the code at the molecular level that dictates how cells begin sort of nondescript without a decided upon fate, and ultimately arranges into this complex, beautiful architectures of the tissues found in the human brain.
Why do the circuits in the brain change in the way that they do? And how does the brain rewire itself over time after a concussion?
How to apply advanced computational techniques to turn this information into useful information that clinicians can actually make you healthier.
We can now build systems to go to specific locations in the genome and engineer topology at will. Should we even consider, as a worldwide community, the possibility of engineering designer humans by intervening in the germline? Like, with the technology comes also tremendous responsibility to start thinking about how these issues could affect society.
You to this Teach-In, this panel on the future of technology, AI, and society. So I'd like to welcome you. There's been a lot in the news about how algorithms, artificial intelligence, are being used in decision making and some of the issues that are involved there. Our panelists today are going to address what this really means and how we can make artificial intelligence algorithms better behaved with respect to these social norms.
This panel will focus a lot on how engineers should think about values and the ethical responsibilities that they have when designing any sort of product. It sort of talked a lot about looking into the future, especially with AI in mind, what kind of legal implications and ethical implications those things might have, and how we should, as a group, accept responsibility for that.
You've got a majority population saying a minority population. There's more bang for your buck if you're the algorithm and you're told something seemingly reasonable, like let's just minimize on average the number of mistakes we make, right? You've got more bang for your buck to fit the statistical properties of the majority population, because more of the people you encounter come from the majority population. So if you've designed your rule to do well on the one population, your average error will be lower than if you've tailored your rule for the smaller population.
Their statisticians concluded that the algorithm was biased. In other words, they found, in fact, that disproportionately minorities and women were excluded from the interview process, and this was completely uncorrelated with academic record.
Here we are using machine learning and algorithms to kind of help us with those decisions to eliminate biases. But in this way, we are accepting group responsibility over a particular decision, which has large implications over a diverse scope, such as the legal system or governmental bodies.
So one advice is experimentation is relatively inexpensive. You should try experimenting.
I think one of the themes that perhaps we'll discuss is that these kinds of discriminations can enter through the machine learning process without there being any specific evil intent by engineers or programmers anywhere in the pipeline. And also it highlights, kind of the complicity not just of, let's say, Google in this case, in the way that they design and manage their algorithms, but in advertisers as well, because of course a major component of what ads you see on a service like Google or Facebook is not just how appropriate they think the content or ad is for you, but also what advertisers are willing to bid for the demographic profile that they think they're getting for a user.
Responsibility is especially important with these kinds of things because I'm talking from the perspective of engineers. We're coming to the point where we have to be ethically aware of the implications of what we're creating, and so it comes at a, our abilities to create a new product comes at a cost as who is responsible for the outcome of whatever algorithm we're building. But as we're developing these as a community, I think it becomes more of a question of understanding where the limitations of what we're creating and understand how to limit those biases that we create.
I'm very glad I'm getting this opportunity in my college life to experience this and hear these amazing people talk about the intersection of their fields with, in a lot of cases, what the general public's opinion is on those fields.
On our walk from beautiful Singhall to another series of intimate discussions at the library in the class of 55, Deirdre Murphy's predictions come true. The evolution timeline starts to disappear under accumulating snow and turn into a rainbow river. Who knows what effect this unseasonable storm will have on the remaining Teach In events.
Yeah, happy first day of spring. The snow is terrible in my opinion. I'm from California, so yeah, I'm not a huge fan.
My point is there are other great civilizations, other great cultures, great empires obviously, but we have something particularly at stake in the way we worry about our debt from antiquity and whether or not we can model ourselves on them or whether they're going to show us what will become of us. It's a very peculiar relationship built into our cultural DNA. Really, would you please stand up if you're an American citizen? All right, that's just to give you a baseline for who here really is within the club. Now, to work out Athenian citizens, the Athenian democracy, would you sit down if you're a woman, please? And would you sit down, please, if you were born in another country? And now would you sit down, please, if you're under the age of 30? And would you sit down, please, if you have not done military service? Who knows? Who knows? This happens every time. This happens every time. You can imagine when I'm teaching undergraduates, there's one poor senior auditor. So do you see, the Athenian democracy is actually not like our democracy in most respects at all. The founding fathers were deeply concerned about the idea of a direct democracy. They modeled the American Constitution and the system of government on a Republican model because they wanted a layer to protect against mob rule. But it's good to have ideals, it's good to aspire, and the Greeks are, I think, a people worth trying to emulate for their best and not their worst. Thank you.
It's sort of like really subtly up to you to figure out that you're presenting people from very different points of view and that you can find common ground in conversation because of your American creed.
I wonder if the American creed is a myth. I mean, these are some of the things that are in my mind. And also the erosion of any American creed that may have existed at some time in the past.
The problem with the American dream is that it's not a level playing field for everyone by any means. And education can help, but it doesn't solve the problem. So I just feel like there are so many privileges there that can help people attain the American dream. And even if they're not super obvious, like with my parents, they still had privileges, even if they were small, that allowed them to do that.
So how do we create this space? It seems to me that it's imperative for all of us to take that on, to walk from this place and, at a minimum, think about the ways in which we can change and we can affect some change and act in a way that actually makes an American creed something that people can embrace.
is the International Day of Happiness, and it's the first day of spring, which is very evident here in snowy Philadelphia. And we are giving a teach-in on well-being sponsored by the Positive Psychology Center at the University of Pennsylvania. And we're very excited to share findings in well-being.
You are at a flea market here in Philadelphia, and you see a lamp that looks like a really interesting lamp, and you decide to buy it. You take it home and you clean it up, and as you rub it, out pops a genie, because it's a magic lamp. And the genie says, I have been waiting for you. And the genie says, I'm so impressed with you that I'm going to transform you into a superhero. Now, the genie further says, the first decision you have to make as a superhero is what color you want to have your cape to be. This is a very important question for superheroes. So the genie says you've got two and only two choices. On the one hand, you could choose a red cape. And if you choose a red cape, you will have the power to fight against the things in the world that we don't want. Things like poverty, injustice, violence, and hunger. On the other hand, you could choose a green cape. And if you choose a green cape, you will have the power to help good things to grow. Love, harmony, understanding, justice. Okay, so on that choice, the genie is waiting. How many of you honestly would say, you know what, I'd take the red cape? Let me see your hands, raise them up high. Red cape, excellent, great, okay, very good. How many of you'd say, I would prefer the green cape? Let me see your hands. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is just take 1 minute to turn to your neighbor, tell them which color cape you would choose and why.
I picked green as well.
Just from personal experiences, you feel like more good can come if you try to grow more good instead of eliminate the bad. Just a more holistic, positive experience, not for just others, but for you yourself.
I think mine is similar. It seems less exhausting.
Yeah.
So it's pretty late. I guess it's lazy. But I mean, it just seems more rewarding. And instead of like always squashing things down, you're actually hopeful. I mean, it could be depressing, I guess. Growing doesn't go well. But yeah.
I don't know if there is a correct answer. The thought experiment isn't to say that one is right and the other is wrong. The point is to say that they're different. Clearly, what we need is a reversible cape. A cape that's red on one side and green on the other. And it turns out that we don't need a genie to offer this to us, right? Our genes have already done it. We have the capacity to avoid the things that we don't want and to approach the things that we do want. I forgot my cape.
You can have the role, the title, the corner office, the business cards, but if you don't have the image of a leader, if you don't have the reputation of a leader who is worth following, then you're just the boss. And when you're the boss, people work for you for a paycheck. When people perceive you as a leader worth following, they will give you their blood, sweat, and tears.
The workshop today was about vocal empowerment for women in leadership. The idea being that you can have the role or the position, the title, but it's the way that you communicate that is really going to make or break whether the image that you create that shows that you're a leader worth following, not just a boss.
I personally struggle with making myself look like an authoritative figure, whether that be in groups or in meetings or just in everyday situations. Just adding credibility to what I say is something that I really want to improve on.
So we worked on the voice, we worked on the physical presence, we worked on word choices, and looking at how all of those are within your control.
But how many people would say that they are not so great at remembering names? Could be better at remembering names. Yeah, most people. So here's the thing. I'm going to absolve you of half of that guilt. And it's because when most people introduce themselves to you, they pronounce their own names wrong. Is that they say their name with a tonality pattern and a rhythm or cadence that makes it cognitively more difficult for you to process and retain what they've said. But I only absolve you of half of that responsibility because in the other half of the conversation, it's you introducing yourself to them in a way that makes their lives more difficult. So I can't fix them, I can fix you. So that's what we're gonna do right here. And finally, most people tend to ask it like a question. Hi, I'm Laura Cipolla. Like, I think. Are you asking me or telling me? Because if you don't know, then this conversation is not going to go very far. So we don't want to hear questions, we want to hear periods. So what I want you to do from now on is this. When you say your first name, I want your pitch to go up. It's like saying, and now I'm not done yet. There's more coming. Hum this with me. Again, That's your more coming. Then at the top, I want you to have a little tiny pause. Tiny little break in sound. Because that pause indicates a word boundary. It lets people know, okay, data point number 1, officially received, prepare to receive data point number 2. And then on your last name, I want your pitch to fall. Hum that with me. That's it. So it's up, pause, and down. Together. Hi. I'm Laura Cicola. You said Laura Cicola, right? Your brain does not know the difference between data and noise. You have to make sure that you are clear in a way that helps the listener to understand. Pay attention to this, not to that.
I think I up-talked myself a few times there, which is when you end a question with a question mark. Or not a question, a statement with a question mark. And, I'm smiling because that makes you sound happier as opposed to angry. So just little mental notes like that, I think I'm more aware of right now.
Interesting idea. When you think about it.
Oh, the first one was up.
Yeah.
Did she not tell you what happened? Did Jimmy tell you what That was really obvious.
You're taking control of all the knowledge that you're getting here at the university, all the experience that you're getting out in the workplace, and making sure that you're conveying that in a way that shows you as the leader, as the authority that you are, man or woman alike.
If you can have such a dramatic impact in how people just remember who you are, understand who you are, based on little vocal tweaks, imagine how much more impact you can have in all conversations if you're able to be this strategic and deliberate in the way that you articulate your message every time.
Having these events for women is really impactful because there's not that many resources on a day-to-day basis that tell women that, hey, I recognize these things that you go through and I want to help you overcome them.
The feedback at the end is, of course, really for me, the indicator that the message landed. So when they're able to pipe up one after another and just say, I learned this, somebody said, my mind was blown, somebody else said, this was so inspirational, this is what we want to make sure that we're doing, that we're inspiring our women, we're inspiring all of our students, and hopefully we can go then and inspire community from there.
Otherwise, I just thank you all for having me today. Had a great time.
We are actually a part of the UPenn Teach In event that's happening this week. It was called Reaction, Empowering the Future Leaders of Design. And today we did a two-part day, with the first being a presentation and panel discussion in the morning. We had lunch and then we did some workshops. The premise of this was to really start to think about women in design and sort of how we navigate ourselves within the field of design and how to leverage the connections we make here at Penn and in our community outwards.
It's basically separate. So
we should do the scavenger hunt first, and then that one. This is the Penn scavenger hunt. Trying to install the app. We're installing the app, and then we're about to win the scavenger hunt because we are winners.
Good answer. All right, so you know what your first clue?
I never lose.
Oh, it's a scavenger hunt, but it's a scavenger hunt based, it's themed around artificial intelligence, which is one of the themes for our teach-in.
So it's a virtual reality or virtual augmented type of augmented reality. I was correct. I was getting it correct to myself.
So augmented reality, it's basically you have an image target and you take your camera and it projects some like 3D model into your phone. So the entry point we thought would be a little lower, right? But that means different things to different people, right? So that's why we're here to help them enter
the game. And we hope that once they enter the game, then it will be easier once they get used to the technology. But perhaps you have another take on it? Yeah. All right. In the hunt. Now you have to write. Of course. The hunt happens both, out in the facility, physical facility, but also on your phone. Go.
What is that way? So, it gives you clues and tells you where to go. You hold it up to the pen sign, and it recognizes the sign, and then it tells you what's your well, it gives you a question. When you answer correctly, it gives you your next clue. Well, it tells you where to go, and there you'll find your next clue.
What's the bottleneck, guys?
There's a lot of text
really
to read.
small.
Bases have been upgraded to level 2.
Yeah.
Let's go.
What it's saying is takes you from the beginning of the information age, which is the first computer, large-scale computer, which is the ENIAC, was here at the University of Pennsylvania. Then it goes through how we use all of that technology to make this robot that now contains artificial intelligence in it. So, but at every step it teaches you something about the history.
Okay, let's go back and figure this out.
No.
Why?
It's supposed to be here. Or maybe that was it. Maybe it's supposed to go back.
You have to get them on your side and then blindside them.
Okay.
Is there another grass?
Did you find anything on any of the signs there?
You gotta root for it at that point. Said if it is sabotage, you gotta root for it at that point.
Right, so this is a way to communicate information without having no one in it, right? You use augmented reality, you use artificial intelligence to educate, and you use obviously games to do that as well.
Also get them to walk around the engineering building, see what kind of cool stuff each lab is making.
Now I don't trust you.
I'm pretty sure it wants us to go to Perch, team.
You finished?
Yes.
After you go to more, you try it.
Oh, you want to cheat now?
And then you go. And then you go to the bathroom.
So how does this work now?
Where's that? Let's see.
So is it, basically, I'm supposed to fire
Now
at something.
Go to the target.
Oh, now I have to. Oh, I see.
Then I'll come down.
Oh, I'm too far. I'm too close. Okay.
Close. Now you have it.
Oh, it's a Space Invader type of game.
Exactly. It's a drone invader.
It's like the old Space Invaders game.
Yeah, it's the old Space Invader.
These drones are hard.
So now you can play until 10 p.m. and the highest score gets recorded.
I'm not sure I'm going to play until 10 p.m. and I want to have dinner at some point.
First place, if you get the highest score in Drone Invaders, you get an HTC Vive, which is a VR headset. And second and third place winners will get a drone.
Flying drone,
yeah.
So they can play with and see what we can do with it.
Did you do it? Did you guys finish?
I would have won, but my phone died. So I lost by default. Technical difficulties.
Wait.
Like drone wars? Oh, I think I'm walking.
Snow continues to accumulate from this unseasonably late storm. School operations are canceled. Only necessary personnel are asked to come to campus. Some teach-in events are affected, such as panels on evolution, digital fakes, and climate change. Maybe today's panel on climate change is best accomplished by soaking in the midwinter feel of this spring storm.
the Charles Adam Fine Arts Building. We're in front of the Kelly Gates, and yesterday was a snow day. We had, I think, over a foot of snow, but now we're back and kicking into spring. Right now we have a show that is featuring student works as part of the Fall Civic Studio on Public Space, the Monument Lab Civic Studio on Public Space, where we had a group of about 30 students working in conjunction with the Monument Lab Public Art and History exhibition. And as part of that class, all of the students worked throughout the city in specific sites that were related to the public exhibition, and they worked as research fellows where they were engaging with the public and asking the public what is their idea for an appropriate monument in the city of Philadelphia today. In fine arts, we typically have studio courses, and this was titled a Civic Studio, where the students were heavily engaged with working within the community, and that was a core part of the class. I think it's very important in kind of pushing all sorts of different modes of research and learning forward.
So since I'm a staff member here, I got an email about the event. I've been to other events throughout the week, except for yesterday because, of course, of the snowstorm. So just want to come here, and I think it's just a good opportunity to learn more about the University of Pennsylvania in general, to see other administrators and just learn more about the culture here. And it's been great. All the workshops have been really amazing.
This is part of the Penn Teach In, which is going on all week, and this is an event that's focused on civic dialogue across differences. Most of the Penn events this week are about knowledge and the challenges to knowledge, especially people that reject credentialed knowledge. This is a very different event because it's actually about how people with equal knowledge and indeed equal decency can find ways to converse across their different perspectives.
I'm a staff member here at the University of Pennsylvania, and I came here today to learn more about sexual harassment and just more about the topic and educating myself. It's a very hot topic right now, and I just want to make sure I know everything about it.
I used to work at the university, and I worked in the Office of Student Conduct, and we did get involved with a lot of sexual assault cases. So I've always been interested in it since then.
The reason we chose sexual harassment is precisely because it's such a contentious and contended subject. What we want to try to do is see if we can figure out ways for people from different points of view to speak civilly and constructively about it.
So I really appreciate the personal roundtable discussions. I think it creates a more intimate atmosphere that will bring about more open and honest conversations about the topic, and hopefully we can find solutions to the conflict or to the problem.
We do have a panel up here, but the panel really exists in order to provoke conversation. As you'll see, our model is we have a beginning conversation among the panelists who do have different points of view in order to trigger discussion at the tables. So this is not going to be an event where they just talk and everyone listens. They're going to talk at the beginning, and then people are going to, at the tables, reflect on what they just heard. They also get lunch. Yeah.
It was good. I think it's good to be able to discuss these hard topics and try and come up with answers to try and limit the amount that this would happen. Being able to have these conversations, be able to talk about it, will give us steps to try and resolve these issues.
It was great. I knew it would be a little uncomfortable because this topic is very uncomfortable to talk about so openly, but I think everybody did a great job being very civil and very restrained and still very open. And I learned a lot of things that I can now take back to my group of friends that are sitting and just wondering how to deal with the subject as a whole. So I thought it was great. I don't get to do this stuff often enough.
I found it fascinating and well worth coming to. can see the generational differences over a period of time. And for people like me who've had so many generations of change, it's educational.
Hope you have a good conversation with Founders. Good luck. I run a bioethics film festival. I think it's interesting that people still seem to kind of find it magic to sit in an auditorium full of strangers. The lights go down and you watch this enormous screen. Then when you combine that with what we can share from our faculty and our guest speakers, our panelists every night, with insights into not only the way the films were made and the ideas that were swirling around when the films were made, but also the continuing ethical implications. We are a bioethics film festival, the ethical implications of these films and how they contribute to, have and continue to contribute to the public conversation about ethics in medicine. There's so much going on that it just seems that the Frankenstein idea, that I think is something people at a gut level understand. And what we want to do with our speakers is kind of tease out those ideas.
The interesting piece here is that it is a mashup of biotechnology, cloning, and genetic engineering with artificial intelligence. And it's interesting to kind of ponder how we might be heading in this direction vis-a-vis creating new organic life, but then figuring out how to upload minds.
When artificial intelligence pioneers start asking the question, can we make machines that we might want to call intelligent or that reproduce some kind of intelligent behavior? They then had to decide what they think constitutes intelligent behavior in people.
The question will be, how do we upload actual memories and minds into these beings if ever we get there?
Okay, well, I'll say this. I think that is science fiction and will remain science fiction in one important way, which is it won't be us we upload.
I'm also just not so sure how ethical we are, right? That there exists out there some data set on which one learns ethics is not, I think, self-evident. Oftentimes when we train machine learning systems on our own behavior, our own speech, our own actions, our own activities, they come back to us sounding more racist than most people you've spoken to in your lifetime. To assume that we have a tool set already available for training machines to be ethical sort of assumes we've solved that problem ourselves.
As for eyes are the windows of the soul. And I think that symbolism is very deliberately used in that sense. There's more than one character destroyed by destroying their eyes. Well done, Ridley.
Yes. Is all about the eyes, right? It's about the pupils. The eyes as the window into the soul. They're the sight at which they think they can tell if you have an emotional response or not. So the appearance of all these eyeballs and what do they really tell us about anything runs through this film as well. I think it's sort of pushing on the degree to which we would like to reduce emotional and empathetic reactions to what you can see in someone's pupils, you know?
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate. All those moments will be lost in time. Like tears in rain. Time to die.
His character at the climax actually comes to feel empathy for the replicants, for the sociopaths.
I you enjoyed our product, and it's really unclear which one they're talking to, and it highlights the degree to which, even though we are supposedly all in this room human beings and don't have to prove that to anyone or perform that for anyone, we are also being co-produced with the technologies that we connect with each other through, that we depend on increasingly, in that we are co-produced with the technologies that we live with, is a theme that's here and maybe only more prominent for us now.
Let's thank our panel.
We have two really exciting topics looking at both passions and real-world challenges, and I think there's a lot of overlap in those areas, but I think it might be just first to start what people think of when they think of passions, if anyone has come to Penn and had one in mind that they've really either been able to cultivate or something even outside their academic experience.
You know, at a place like this, your passion, however it manifests itself in particular ways, is usually about trying to understand. It's about, and that may shift during your career from one thing to another, but it's about trying to understand.
At Penn, you're able to take a lot of classes, whichever ones you want. So I've taken photography classes, environmental health classes, anthropology classes, and it's all really cool. And I'm hoping to take Wharton classes, computer science classes also.
Certainly, I think what Penn and other schools like it do is they allow you to specialize in something that you do become passionate in without forcing you to find that one thing way too early.
I'm delighted to hear your story because frankly I don't hear it enough.
For nursing, I personally feel that there's less of a pressure to find internships because all the professors say you have job security, or you can do whatever you want and then you can come back and get your master's. But I do have a lot of friends who are in the college or Wharton who are stressing a lot about that, and I think they end up trying to take classes that will benefit them for jobs or something instead of taking what they'd rather take. Or to complete certain majors or minors in their degrees instead.
You can do anything here, and that's what we tell incoming students, freshmen. But
it's beneficial for for students to for them to determine what they want to do in the future. Several days ago, I heard a story that from a faculty in Department of Psychology that they enrolled one student from the School of General Medicine. That student, once he attended their 8-week program, clinical rotation program, and he discovered that his real interest is in psychology.
Even just that little bit of exposure, you don't have to do the formal dual degree, but where do we create more nimble opportunities to have those kinds of experiences to see, because then you pick different courses that you take along the way.
But I have the opportunity thanks to my parents, and definitely I work hard too, but I'm always trying to share what I've learned here, then kind of can inspire people. Even they didn't have the opportunity to come to UPenn, but they can know what UPenn taught me, so then I can taught them how to think. Because for us, we cannot give people $100 every day, but we can use the $100 to teach them something, so then they can make a life by themselves. So that's why I think education is always the key.
Some of what you've just described is the ways in which we can help what actually says you're following your passion. But I wonder about the role of faculty in igniting that passion.
But just in general, there's nobody that I know that's in the STEM field at large that looks like me, that's a woman, a colored woman. Yeah. And I feel like that's big for me, because if I'm going to talk to somebody about, can you give me some more information about the field? If I go to you, or no offense, but I feel like I feel like I get a very textbook answer, like, so and so field is great because of this, this, and that. Whereas if I went to a black woman in, let's say, the physics department, it would be a very different conversation that I'm having. I feel like I'm more at home.
A lot of our faculty sort of completely understand this, and they are committed to helping you, to connect you to like people who can then be mentors. For example, we have other friends like, Chanda, or like other friends that we can put you in contact with, but also there are support systems at Penn, like the different clubs and organizations where we can really try to at least help have that conversation at a deeper level.
I think the one thing common to everything that I heard here is, I think, the desire to transform society for the benefit of humankind. So I guess I'm just thinking aloud here and trying to react to some of the things you said, which are. But the thing that impresses me is that we don't really have, at least in engineering, and correct me if I'm wrong, and Wharton, if we actually have these kinds of discussions, which perhaps do happen in social policy and practice.
And I think she also feels frustrated, given that, the implications of her research might be used to fund war, but that's where the money is. Or she has to do, it's so narrowly specialized, she's not able to ask those big questions. And I think this is something that's affecting all disciplines.
I do think that there needs to be some way of having this kind of a dialogue in a broader setting. So thank you for raising this.
Yeah, just what is our knowledge being used for, and do we really have a say in that in a system like this? And I just want to really be critical and ask that question.
It's easy to get sucked into to be confined to the Penn bubble, and then just you have to consciously make the decision, I think, to step outside. And the opportunities are there, but how are they utilized, I think, is the question. And how do students know about them, and if they do, what's stopping them to look at it?
We want to increase community outreach at Penn, and if we want to have people develop those skills where you work with other people and you teach them, it would have to be a policy change. It couldn't just be a nudge.
It does. I agree with you, Paul, that it's not really going to work very well if the administration says this is the way we are. It's going to be the students saying this is the way we are, and we want the education to reflect that.
The overarching conversation topic is preparation for real world, through, I guess, your academics at Penn. Do you feel like you've been prepared for the real world?
So I feel like what Penn's done for me is more just shown me a variety of problems that I've had to solve, and put me in really hard situations with really smart people, which is what I expect I'll be doing in the real world. So I think it's prepared me very well for the real world, for what I want to do anyway.
What they call, when prepared for the real world challenge, right? It's not what to think, it's how to think. So, that's basically what I want to get when I come to UPenn. Like I say, we have really good professors here. So if I don't know something, I can't figure it out.
I'm one that doesn't think you have.
I think it went phenomenally well, better than I could have expected. The snow day was a bummer, but I was really amazed at the level of engagement. Most of the events I went to were standing room only, and there were students, there were faculty, there were administrators, there were community members really talking about very complex issues that matter to all of us. So it really did, I think, exactly what we wanted it to do, which is to bring people together to try and solve problems that none of us can solve alone.
But in the end, what we should be doing here is providing each other opportunities for reflection through which we grow.
And you take whatever measure you want, the diversity of the student body, the faculty, the interactions that happen on campus, the kinds of dialogues we have, incredibly diverse and lots of interesting things happening on campus.
The idea that diversity makes for better learning, diversity makes for a better environment. It's extraordinary. I find it a joy to be able to teach every time I teach a class, and part of who's in the room. People from all different backgrounds.
I think the Teach In was a great success. It brought together faculty and students from across campus in a way that hadn't been done before. And I think generated a lot of enthusiasm for the work that's going on here at Penn.
Yeah, I think I'm filled with optimism, the role of a university and its role in society and the impact it can have. I think the discussions I saw really make me feel much better about what I'm doing at Penn and the university I'm a part of.
the level of engagement with people from outside the university, just the sheer excitement that we're doing something like this, pulling people together. Will we do something on this scale again? Not in the near future, this is a lot of work, but I can well see how we can build upon this, take elements of it, and perhaps conduct more specialized workshops, reach out into the larger community. But yes, this is the first step, hopefully of very many.
Penn is considered the global leader in this work, but as the provost emphasized and others, so much more needs to happen. As Vijay emphasizes, Tony, that we need to make this more fundamental to the University of Pennsylvania. We need to make this as a central feature that runs through what we do and continue to do, and even define Penn more fully than it has. And it requires ongoing, continuous reflection and improvement to do that, and hard work and good leadership from the president, provost, and deans, as well as from faculty and students.
So the question in my mind is how to continue to engage more productively and meaningfully with the thousands of people who already come. Right? And so I think this is a perfect example of doing that, just constantly offering opportunities for conversation, being completely welcoming and opening, being clear that we don't believe that we have an ownership of knowledge, that we are the only ones that know things and that we are educating others, but in fact that we are engaged in conversations.
So if you really want to understand something, just try to change it. And changing it in place may be among the most powerful ways to create interdisciplinary studies.
Okay, on that wonderful note.